Let me tell you something paradoxical. The moment you stop chasing, everything changes. We spend so much of our lives running after people, attention, approval, thinking that the harder we try, the more likely we are to be valued. But in truth, it works the other way around. When you finally let go, when you stop pursuing so desperately, that's when people start to notice you. That's when they start to seek you. Why is that? It starts from within. Most people are unaware of the silent forces driving their behaviors. The buried insecurities, the need for validation, the fear of being alone. These forces, left unacknowledged, control you. They push you to reach out again and again to someone who isn't reaching back. They make you beg in subtle ways, through long texts, unnecessary apologies, anxious check-ins, not out of genuine care, but from a deep-rooted fear of not being enough. When you chase someone, you're not just pursuing them, you're unconsciously telling them and yourself that you lack something. You're reinforcing a message, I need you to complete me. That energy speaks louder than words. And the truth is, no one is attracted to desperation, even if it's cloaked in politeness or charm. People are drawn to wholeness. They seek out those who don't need them, because those people radiate something powerful: peace, confidence, and self-sufficiency. When you stop chasing, you begin to meet your own shadow. And I don't mean shadow as in darkness or evil, but that part of you that hides beneath the surface, the wounded child, the rejected self, the parts you'd rather not see. It's uncomfortable. It might even hurt. But sitting with that discomfort instead of running from it is where real strength begins. When you confront the part of you that says, I am nothing without their love, you begin to disarm it. You loosen its grip. You see, wholeness isn't about being perfect or completely healed. It's about owning your entire self, your light and your shadow. It's standing in front of the mirror and saying, I'm not chasing because I don't need to prove my worth. I already have it. That shift changes everything. You go from being someone who begs to someone who simply is. You move from asking for love to embodying love, and that is magnetic. What happens next is subtle, almost invisible. The person you once chased starts to notice a change in you. Your silence begins to speak volumes. They wonder what's shifted. Suddenly, you're no longer the one waiting by the phone, the one double texting, the one always available. You're not withholding, you're just present with yourself. And that absence of need becomes attractive. They feel it, even if they don't understand it, and often they begin to seek what they once overlooked. But this isn't about strategy. This isn't about manipulating someone into wanting you. If your goal is to be chased back, you've already lost. The moment you stop chasing must be the moment you truly come back to yourself, not to provoke, but to reclaim your own power. You walk away not because you want them to follow, but because your peace matters more than their attention. That's the difference. Most people walk away with one eye still looking over their shoulder. But the true transformation happens when both your feet and your heart face forward. When your detachment isn't a tactic, but a truth. That's when the energy shifts. That's when people feel the change, not just on the outside, but deep within the dynamic. So when someone finally does seek you out after you've stopped chasing, it's not because you disappeared. It's because you became whole. It's because you stopped needing and started being. And in that state of being, you reflect back something rare and irresistible. Someone who is complete. Someone who isn't trying to fill a void. Someone who chose themselves. And that, more than anything, is what truly draws people in. You stop chasing, they start seeking. Not because you played a game, but because you became the kind of person worth seeking. When you chase someone, you create resistance. It's almost like trying to push two magnets together with the same poles facing each other. No matter how hard you try, they repel. The more energy you pour into pulling someone closer, the more likely they are to pull away. Not because they don't care, necessarily, but because the energy between you becomes unbalanced. It shifts from being natural to being forced, and anything forced loses its essence. You see, connection isn't something you build by pressure, it's something that forms through presence. There is an invisible dynamic at play between people, an emotional current that responds to the subtle cues of energy, confidence, and intent. When you're in a state of chasing, your energy is saying, "I am not enough without your attention, I need you to feel complete." And that message, whether spoken or not, is felt deeply. It makes the other person either withdraw or feel overwhelmed. But when you stop chasing and instead return to your center, everything changes. The energy shifts from need to wholeness, from grasping to groundedness. And that difference is everything. People sense it. They may not always articulate it, but they feel it. An unspoken magnetism, a pull that comes not from effort, but from essence. It's much like the way water flows. Try to grab a handful and it slips through your fingers. But if you hold your hand open, gently, water can rest in your palm. When you stop chasing, you become the open palm. You stop trying to control the outcome. You begin to flow. And in that flow there is peace. And peace is irresistibly attractive. When someone knows you're always available, always reaching out, always trying, they begin to expect it. They get used to it. And that expectation often turns into complacency. The moment you step back, though, the pattern breaks. The other person starts to feel your absence. They start to wonder. Curiosity begins to grow in the space you've left behind, and that curiosity becomes the seed of seeking. This doesn't mean playing hard to get. It's not about pretending not to care. It's about truly letting go of the need to be needed. It's about realizing that your value doesn't increase by how much you pursue someone. It increases by how much you honor your own boundaries and your own peace. There is a deep psychological truth at play here. People are drawn to what feels emotionally safe and energetically full. When you are chasing, you are in a way leaking energy, giving too much, hoping for something in return. But when you stop chasing, you seal those leaks. You conserve your energy. You become whole. And wholeness invites. Now, people will often say, "But if I stop trying, won't they forget me? Won't they move on?" The answer is simple. If your presence can only be sustained by constant effort, then it was never mutual to begin with. Real connection doesn't vanish when you stop chasing. It deepens. It either reveals that the bond was never real, or it strengthens, because it's no longer forced. Think about it. When was the last time you truly admired someone who is constantly running after people's attention? Rarely does admiration grow in that soil. But when someone stands in quiet confidence, without begging to be seen, they are seen. Not because they demanded it. So what happens when you stop chasing is not about them coming back. It's about you coming back to yourself. It's about reclaiming your emotional balance. It's about creating space for reciprocity instead of exhausting yourself with one-sided effort. And in that space, the dynamic has a chance to realign. If it's real, it will return with greater clarity. If it's not, it will fall away. And that too is a gift. People begin to seek you when you stop chasing them, because your energy becomes clean. It's no longer mixed with desperation or fear. It becomes rooted in self-respect. And self-respect is powerful. It's the quiet signal that tells the world, "I am whole, with or without you." That's not coldness, it's clarity. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. And in a world full of noise and need, that kind of presence stands out. So stop chasing, not as a tactic, but as a truth. Let your energy speak louder than your words ever could. Let it say, "I'm not here to convince anyone to stay. I'm here to be, fully and freely." That's when people start to notice. That's when the pull begins. That's when they start seeking what they once took for granted. There's a strange paradox in human relationships. The more we try to hold on to someone, the more likely we are to lose them. And the moment we release our grip, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity, something shifts. That shift isn't about playing games or manipulating outcomes. It's about understanding the role detachment plays in emotional truth. Detachment isn't the absence of love, it's the presence of self-awareness. Most people associate detachment with coldness or indifference, but that's not what I'm speaking of. True detachment is warm, conscious, and rooted in the understanding that your sense of identity is not defined by another person's presence in your life. When we operate from attachment, we lose ourselves in the effort to hold someone close. We become reactive, over-abundant, and emotionally dependent. We confuse love with control and care with possession. But when we detach, something powerful happens. We begin to witness. We stop needing the relationship to give us value and instead allow it to reflect the value that already exists within us. That change in dynamic, subtle but profound, can completely transform how others experience us. It brings balance and balance. You see, when you're too emotionally attached, you don't leave room for the other person to come toward you. Your energy is constantly moving in their direction, which means there's no space for them to miss you, to think, to wonder. You fill all the silence, solve all the gaps, carry all the weight. It creates an imbalance where the other person unconsciously feels they don't have to invest because you're doing it all for both of you. But when you step back, not to punish, not to provoke, but simply because you've remembered your own center, you open the door for something else to enter: respect. And respect is the foundation of any real connection. When you detach, you're not giving up on the connection, you're allowing it to either grow authentically or fade gracefully. You're no longer acting from fear of loss, but from love of self. It's interesting how people often return not when you try harder, but when you stop trying altogether. That isn't coincidence, it's response. It's the natural reaction to your shift in energy, because people aren't just drawn to your affection, they're drawn to your stability. When you stop chasing and you detach, your presence becomes a safe space rather than a pressure point. That emotional safety is attractive, not in a romanticized way, but in a deeply human way. And here's where the work begins: learning to sit in that space of uncertainty, without reaching, without forcing, without needing to fill the silence with effort, just allowing, just being. That's where your strength is built. And it's in that strength that others begin to notice something different in you. They may not know what changed, but they feel it. Your energy is no longer pulling on them. It's holding its own, it's whole. Detachment also gives you the gift of clarity. When you're not constantly acting from emotional entanglement, you can see things for what they are. You can recognize whether someone is meeting you halfway, or whether you've been carrying the weight of the connection alone. That realization doesn't harden you. It liberates you. It gives you permission to stop auditioning for a role in someone else's life and to begin fully living in your own. Sometimes, the greatest expression of love isn't holding on, it's letting go. It's giving both yourself and the other person the freedom to choose, without guilt, without pressure. And when someone chooses you freely, not because you chased them, but because they saw your light and walked toward it, that's real. That's lasting. This path of detachment isn't easy. It asks you to trust the unknown, to lean into silence, and to believe in the power of your own presence. But when you do, the connections that remain are the ones that were meant to. And those that fade, they were never truly aligned with your soul to begin with. So let go, not to lose, but to allow. Allow what is real to stay. Allow what is not to fall away. And in that allowing, you'll find peace. You'll find strength. You'll find that sometimes it is only in your absence that people can truly feel the weight of your presence. Have you ever noticed how something begins to mean more to you once it's no longer immediately available? It's a strange truth about human nature. What is always present, always accessible, often fades into the background. But the moment it becomes distant or scarce, our attention sharpens. We start to wonder, we start to value. That's not manipulation, that's awareness. That's the psychology of presence and absence at play. This isn't about playing games or withholding love. It's about understanding that people often don't realize what something or someone truly means until they're faced with the possibility of losing it. Consistent over-availability can dull appreciation. When you're always the first to reach out, always ready to answer, always there when someone needs you, without them ever needing to meet you in the middle, you become easy to overlook, not because you're not worthy, but because your presence has been taken for granted. Absence invites reflection. When you remove your energy, gently, not with bitterness but with quiet confidence, you create space for the other person to see the picture more clearly. In that space, something powerful happens. They begin to remember what it felt like to have you close. And without your voice constantly filling the silence, your silence begins to speak. It echoes. And in that echo there is mystery, there is depth. There is the subtle reminder of your value, not because you demanded it, but because you allowed them to feel it. People long for what feels rare. That's not about scarcity in a material sense, but about emotional availability being a conscious choice. When you make yourself available without boundaries, without pause, you communicate, often unconsciously, that your worth is negotiable. But when you step back and reclaim your space, you create contrast. And in contrast, value becomes visible. Just like a beautiful piece of art becomes more captivating when it's framed with care and given room to breathe, so does your presence become more meaningful when it's not constantly poured out. There's beauty in a little distance. It's in that space that someone begins to feel their own desire arise, not because you pushed, but because you pulled back. And desire born from longing is always more potent than desire born from pressure. There's a difference between someone being around you because you're always available and someone choosing to seek you because your absence stirred something in them. That difference is everything. Stillness has a voice. When you stop speaking, when you stop showing up uninvited, when you stop doing all the emotional labor, people are left with themselves. And in that quiet, they begin to feel the absence of your presence. Not just physically, but emotionally. Your laughter, your warmth, your insight, your attention. All the things they had easy access to now return to their proper place. Not something owed, but something earned. Mystery is not manipulation. It's not about being distant to control another person. It's about returning to yourself so fully that others are left with the space to feel your significance. It's the difference between chasing someone with your energy and allowing your energy to be remembered. Because when you're not constantly reaching out, when you're not trying to be seen, you become more visible than ever. You'll often hear people say, "I didn't realize how much they meant to me until they were gone." That statement holds a deep truth. But it's not about vanishing completely. It's about retreating from the need to constantly prove your worth and trusting that if what you gave had value, it will be remembered. It will be missed. And what is missed is often sought again. Let others feel your absence, not to punish them, but to remind them. Let them sit in the silence without you, not to teach them a lesson, but to let your presence become a memory that grows stronger with distance. Because when someone realizes they've been moving through life with your light always shining in their corner, and then suddenly it's gone, they feel the contrast. And it is in that contrast that they come to understand your worth in a way they couldn't when you were always right there. So allow yourself to step back, not to disappear, but to be seen. Not to create longing, but to awaken recognition. Let your absence carry the message your presence never had to explain. There's a quiet, undeniable truth in life. People are drawn to wholeness. Not perfection, not invincibility, but emotional wholeness. When someone feels emotionally full within themselves, they radiate something difficult to describe, but impossible to ignore. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it's simply a sense of calm self-possession, a steadiness that says, I am enough. When you stop chasing someone, something remarkable begins to unfold within you. The energy that was once spent reaching outward begins to return home. It doesn't disappear, it recirculates. And in that process, you begin to reconnect with parts of yourself that were neglected in the effort to be chosen, seen, or validated. You start to realize that the real pursuit wasn't about getting them, it was about remembering you. Emotional independence is not isolation. It's not about shutting people out or pretending you don't care. On the contrary, it's about caring in a way that doesn't cost your center. It's about being able to say, I want connection, but not at the expense of myself. I want closeness, but not at the price of self-abandonment. That's emotional maturity. That's self-alignment. And it's magnetic. When you reclaim your energy from the chase, you begin to stand differently in your life. Your presence changes. You become someone who is not waiting for validation, but offering connection from a place of wholeness. And that shift changes everything. Not only how others see you, but how you see the world. You're no longer operating from need. You're offering from fullness. Need can feel heavy. It has weight. It carries expectation. But fullness feels light. It's effortless. It says, I am here and I'm open. But I am not dependent on you for my peace. And when someone senses that, they don't feel pressured. They feel free. And in that freedom, something beautiful happens. People lean in. Not because they're forced, not because you pursued them, but because they're drawn to the steadiness of your presence. That's the irony of chasing. The more you do it, the more someone may feel the need to retreat. Not because they don't care, but because the dynamic becomes emotionally expensive. But when you stop, when you turn inward, when you begin to nurture your own emotional ground, you become rooted. And rooted people are attractive, not because they shout their worth, but because they live it. Being emotionally full means you don't chase, you attract. You don't beg, you embody. And when you embody emotional self-sufficiency, you signal to others that you are a safe place. A grounded presence. Not someone who drains, but someone who offers. Not someone who fears loss, but someone who honors truth. Now, this journey inward isn't always easy. At first, when you stop chasing, you may feel empty. You may feel forgotten. But that's not because you've lost something. It's because you're detoxing from the illusion that you ever had to chase in the first place. And that space, that silence, is where the healing begins. It's where your emotional roots begin to grow deeper, where your identity starts to rebuild on the solid ground of your own enoughness. And as those roots strengthen, you begin to carry yourself differently, not out of arrogance, but out of quiet knowing. You stop chasing people who were never truly meeting you. You stop explaining your worth to those who couldn't hear it. You stop reaching and start radiating. And it's from that place of fullness, of steadiness, of clarity, that people feel something shift in you. They may not know why, but they feel your presence more fully when you're no longer trying to prove it. They feel your energy even more clearly when you're not pushing it toward them. And that's when seeking begins, because you've become someone who doesn't need to be chosen to know their value. The most beautiful relationships arise not when two halves complete each other, but when two wholes meet and choose to walk together. That's the gift of emotional fullness. It's the place from which all authentic connection flows, not because you need each other, but because you see each other. So when you stop chasing and start healing, when you begin pouring your energy into becoming whole instead of being wanted, you'll find that the very people you once felt the need to pursue will start turning their heads, not because you called out to them, but because they finally heard the quiet, confident voice of your presence. There's a profound moment that arrives when you stop chasing someone. It's not loud or dramatic. It doesn't come with fireworks or fanfare. It comes in the quiet realization that you no longer need to force what isn't flowing, that your peace is no longer dependent on someone else's presence. And in that moment, something sacred happens. You return to yourself. Many people fear that if they stop trying, if they stop reaching out, everything will fall apart, that the bond will break, that silence will be mistaken for disinterest. But what they don't see is that chasing is what dilutes the connection. When you overextend, when you constantly give without reciprocity, you're not preserving the relationship, you're exhausting it. You're exhausting yourself. And in the process, the most vital part of you, your own essence, fades into the background. But when you stop, when you step back and allow things to unfold without resistance, you allow a deeper truth to surface. You discover who genuinely wants to stay in your life. Not because you begged, not because you reminded them, but because even in your absence, your presence remained with them. That is the kind of bond worth building, one that breathes even when you're no longer feeding it with effort. Letting go of the chase isn't giving up, it's growing up. It's realizing that love cannot be sustained by force, that true connection is not forged in desperation, but in mutual recognition. It is never your job to convince someone of your value. That's a burden you were never meant to carry. Your only job is to live in alignment with your truth, to show up as your authentic self, and to allow others the freedom to choose or walk away. And if they walk away, let them. Because what's meant for you won't require you to become smaller, quieter, or less of yourself just to be kept. There's a unique freedom that blooms in that letting go. You begin to feel light again. You start laughing from a deeper place. You notice the beauty around you more clearly, not because someone has come back, but because you've come back to you. You begin to realize that your joy, your clarity, and your peace were never supposed to depend on how someone else feels about you. They were always within you, waiting for you to stop running long enough to notice. And that's where the transformation begins, not in the return of someone else, but in the return of your own spirit. In the stillness that follows the chase, you begin to hear yourself again. Your needs, your desires, your forgotten dreams, all the parts of you that were put on hold in the name of being loved. They begin to surface, and they ask for your attention. This kind of self-reconnection is powerful, because once you feel it, you no longer chase, not because you're bitter, but because you finally understand that what is real will meet you where you are. You won't have to beg for it, perform for it, or fight for a place in someone's life. You'll simply show up as you are, and those meant to walk with you will show up too. Sometimes, when you stop chasing, people do come back. They feel the absence of your energy and begin to understand what you've brought into their life. But even if they don't, you won't be waiting, you'll be living. And that's what matters most. Because the moment you let go of chasing is the moment you begin walking forward. Not in pursuit of someone else, but in pursuit of the life that's calling you, a life where you are centered, whole, unshaken. You were never meant to exhaust yourself proving your worth to anyone. You were meant to walk freely, to love fully, and to rest in the knowing that what is aligned with your soul will never need to be chased. It will arrive, it will remain, and it will rise to meet you. So when you finally stop chasing, don't look back to see who's following. Look inward and keep walking. because the one you were truly meant to find was never them. It was always you. In the depths of the unconscious, we find that what we chase often eludes us. Reflect on this idea and share your insights in the comments below. Like, if you resonate with this timeless truth, and subscribe to this journey into the psyche for more reflections on the human experience. Share this with others, for the mysteries of the self are meant to be explored together.